And welcome back to Shifting Realities podcast. We're back with our guest series, and today I am really pleased to introduce Catherine Stagg-Macy. Catherine is an executive coach, a team coach, runs an amazingly fabulous podcast that you should listen to called Unsaid at Work. We'll put links below. She's also a DJ. Is there much you don't do, Catherine?
We didn't mention my ceramics, my recent ceramics journey. So yeah,
Oh,
no.
no, we didn't.
And
Okay.
I make very good vegan cakes. So no, maybe there's not much I don't do.
Right, I'm going to throw a word at you, a dirty word for some people, and I
Oh,
want you
go
to
on.
tell me what it means to you. And that word is quite simply spirituality.
Oh, this is such a setup.
Yep.
um,
Yeah.
I mean, without thinking, because I love this exercise, like three words that come to my mind without any filtering is patchouli, woo woo, and witches dancing around fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I can buy the patchouli part.
Okay.
I can probably buy the witches dancing around a fire. They're not really so much, but I'll allow it. So I'll take 1.5 out of 3.
Okay.
Right. Um. So think through those 3 things. And underneath that, is there anything continuous that you see that links them?
Um, I mean, it's sort of pretty out there,
Uh-huh.
outside, out of the kind of science world that I come from, unexplained, and yeah,
Unproven.
yeah,
Hmm.
potentially can't be proven. Therefore, in the science world, doesn't exist if it can't be proven.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. My take on spirituality, I think, would define itself as learning to trust my true self.
Mm.
So to live that authentic life, free from any kind of parameters that shut down opportunity.
I mean, it's
Does
interesting.
that
I think
make
it's
any
such a
sense?
loaded. Yeah, I can see that. I think it's such a loaded term, right? Because I think, I mean, this is the work of both of you, but for me, not having spent a lot of time thinking about the word, it feels very caught up in centuries of religious oppression, um, fakes. People claiming, people
Yep.
running around southern England in 1600s claiming to, solve your whatever with mercury and killing people. There's all sorts of
Yep.
it feels
Yep.
very heavy and very laden. So I like the fact that you guys are reclaiming, are finding a way of reclaiming it in a modern, healthy, in a way that's healthy for the human spirit. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, I would hope it's healthy. Julie, do you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. Yes. I mean, the other side of this, spirituality, it's just for me, it's how we want to not just survive. We're in the middle of, just trying to survive on Earth, and it's never should be like that. The lessons we're learning here, if you want to call it spirituality, is this greater lesson of just raising consciousness, raising our frequency, and learning to absolutely thrive. And where do we get all that from? For me, it just starts within. It starts with, am I joyful now? Am I feeling peace now? Not, I'm going to look to the outside. And when the outside feels peaceful, then I'll be peaceful. So a lot of this is our experience, our individual experience as we've gone on. Many of us have gone on for many years to a certain age to try and experience and understand all the way along what our experiences are actually letting us and allowing us to grow and develop and come away from. And ultimately, my lesson is, go within, find the peace and joy within, and then your outside world, the world around you, will develop. And to me, I've gone into looking at more things like how our DNA works, how quantum physics works. So yes, there is that element of it's not quite the physics, the physical matter, but then we know ultimately this physical matter, our bodies look physical, but we know now that they're not. So for me, looking into what is everything. Everything feels actually that it's energy, it's vibration, it's frequency. And that's where I come from with this spirituality. And so if my frequency is higher, the things outside will match my frequency. If my frequency is lower, everything outside is just a magnet, is just a mirror to my own frequency. Hope that answered your question, Rob.
More than, thank you. Yeah.
There's definitely
Catherine,
an
I've been
overlap
listening.
in coaching of,
Yeah.
whatever form of coaching, executive coaching, life coaching, performance coaching, like it comes back to, I mean, in your language, Julie, finding the peace within, or living authentic, like who am I? Like it's the very core of any psychology based work. Who am I, and how do I strip away the experiences that I have over identified and over coupled with to understand myself? And living authentic life is not always possible. I mean, you have to say that too, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with you there.
It becomes difficult. It's difficult, isn't it? It feels hard. It feels like our lives have been quite hard to have those experiences that we've had for many people.
Well, I think it's very trendy in the, with representing the workplace here, to say, for senior people to go, just bring your authentic self. And so, you do this spiritual work or your development work, and you find out who that might, you have have a better sense of who that is, and then you're invited to show up in a system like the NHS or a large FTSE 100 company, and and which I think is still very orchestrated around dare I say white middle-aged men. And so if you present differently in any other way, it's your authenticity is not welcomed. For example, a lot of women that I coach come to me, go, I need to be less emotional. I'm like, no, you don't. You absolutely don't. Because the feedback they get, they feel their emotions, they express their emotions. They might be clumsy in doing that. There might be some work around feeling the emotion, expressing that. But the system feeds back to them, that's not welcome. You're being too emotional. You shouldn't feel angry. So you're getting gaslit in the organization about your feelings, and then you're being told to suppress that. And then there's this imbalance of, but that who I am authentically is to feel my emotions and to express that. But then I operate in a system that says absolutely no. And if you continue to do that, well, you will be punished. You will be overlooked for promotion. You'll be sidelined for the interesting projects. So yeah, I love the idea of living an authentic life, and I think it needs that there's a caveat to that about what circumstances are people finding themselves in.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid comment.
Mm.
Just tell me if you can. I don't know even if you've thought this through. Since you quit working at the coalface, I mean, you were pretty much high flying when I first knew you in London, and you quit and you start an entirely new direction for your life, which is remarkable, and I think was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel, how do you describe the change in yourself from making that decision, quitting, so really jumping off the edge of the cliff and hoping for the net to be there?
Rebasing without a parachute. Yeah. Don't do it the way I did it. Yep.
But do you feel, on reflection, a spiritual journey in that, allowing the spiritual word to have its semantic variance?
I am fundamentally changed by the experience. And you're back to this theme of authenticity. I spent 20 plus years consulting and hating it, but very good by the external measure of success. Here's more money. You're doing great. Have a promotion. Get more exciting work, and you're like, it's all right. I'm doing, but my soul, it was like, what the fuck are we doing? And I had periods of depression and I think it was there was lots of real existential angst and all of that going, is this what I have to be doing for another 20 years? And it came at a crisis of turning 40 going, my soul had a revolt. I'm like, we're not doing this. We're going to pivot on some savings and do the thing that I wanted to do when I was 17. And my father told me he didn't want me, psychology wasn't a real degree. So it felt like a journey of coming home to the thing that my intuition and soul knew at 17 that I wanted to do. But I played by the rules because I was a good girl then. And it took me 20 years to get on track.
Quite a process, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think there's also the other thing of running your own business that you two could probably relate to is there's no one to blame. And so you come up right against your own edges of like, well, what is my relationship with money? Like, what is my ancestral relationship with money, and what am I sitting with? How I want to be authentic and be myself. Then can I show up and show up on social media and present myself in a way that feels authentic? Can I deal with the unkind glare of social media and putting yourself out there and what that attracts? So, you really, the solo entrepreneur journey is one of really finding and continuously going back to like, well, who am I now, and how do I want to show up, and what parts do I want to protect? Like, I don't have to show everything to everybody.
Right.
So more, whereas at work, when I was in a corporate, it's like, well, my boss is a twit. He doesn't, if you just gave us some money and invested in this project, we would be flying, or the client, projected onto the client, or there's lots to project on in the corporate.
For sure.
Nothing to project on when you're running your own business. Yeah.
Yeah. Running your own business is a curious place to be. I notice it when something happens with tech and I go, I don't know how to do this. I used to have 20 people in a room somewhere would just fix this. Now I have to fix it myself.
It's frustrating.
Frustrating, but it's all a lesson, isn't it? Little lessons all the way.
Yes.
So now that you've arrived at this point, and in my view, and you may disagree with it, I think that in what you are doing, you are immensely gifted and immensely successful. I'm sure you want it to grow and it to be bigger, but I look at you now and I still see the same Catherine, but I see a whole different vibe, which is remarkable and lovely. And I see someone much more assured. I used to look at you back in your coalface days and go, oh, crazy girl, she really achieves. Wow, impressed. But now I look at you and I go, doing what matters, impressed. Really doing something that changes people, and in so doing changes yourself. And that really for me is the spiritual journey.
Yeah, I think there's a opportunity perhaps in my work and in yours that feels similar, where you can be open to being influenced by the work and the people you choose to work with.
Yeah.
And choose certain people to work with, right? And choose not to work with other people. Maybe it's a vibration thing, Julie, right? It's like, I just don't get bad vibes of you. I'm not working with you.
We were talking about that this morning, that we want to work with people, but we don't want to work with the wrong people.
Yeah.
Because then you just beat your head on the wall and you don't get anywhere, and it either yourself or they. Yeah.
Well, one of the things my business coach has gifted me was the sense of, so that the coalface Catherine that you referred to, Rob, I think was indoctrinated in the world that hard graft gets the results, with a lot of kind of yang energy, right? Like, just get on, do it. And I've always had the privilege and luck of being able to do a lot more work than most other people in the same amount of time, which has resulted in a lot of success. But the journey in the last 10 years has changed. Maybe the last 3 years, when my business coach, I would go like, oh, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And she goes like, well, where's the energy? I'm like, oh, that's a completely different question. And so the podcast was brought out of, I had tried to launch a group coaching program that had completely bombed, and I was having a little sulk for several months. And she's like, well, what lights you up? I'm like, ooh, I have this like podcast idea, and we'll talk about stuff that no one else talks about, and I can invite cool guests. I'm like, I have 30 guests I can really. And she's like, why don't you do that? I'm like, oh yeah, it's my business. Yeah, I'll go do a podcast. And the cycle comes, I'm 80 episodes in, and the energy is gone for me in the podcast. And so I'm going to stop. I'm stopping at series 2. There might be a series 3. I don't know. But for the moment, that's the end of it. So this idea of following intuition, the energy, the whatever you want to call it, is not something I would have done in corporate because I don't know if there's any space for it.
Right.
But it's one of the things I've really come to embrace. And I think that there's a more feminine energy in that. There's a cyclical nature in, like, for the moment, I'm also pulling back from social media because I'm not getting anything back out of it. So I'm going to go down to 3 weeks over summer. And if initially my very well programmed masculine side is like, what do you mean you're taking time off? Like, you won't get business, and then we'll starve, and then we'll be on the streets. And then you're like, just dial it down. It's like social media and the podcast have brought in no revenue. So if we stop it, and I get to choose where I get excited. So, and that's not where it is at the moment. It'll come back. And this idea of Catherine May's beautiful book, Wintering, kind of blows open the idea for me of, well, I might be in a wintering period. Nothing to do with the weather outside, right? And the wintering period might go on for years.
Absolutely.
And I think I'm going into a wintering period on the creative side. So still working with clients that I already have and loving the core coaching work, but the stuff that goes around that, you're like, I'll see. And that just sounds, I mean, even as I say that out loud, I'm like, that sounds a bit weird. Like, where's the strategy? Were saying this morning, where's the plan?
Yeah. Weird is wonderful. Julie and I identify with weird.
Yes.
And in fact, said in our podcast
I know this is a good place to use that.
Weird is the new normal. Yeah. And we're owning it. Proudly weird. That's a t-shirt waiting to happen. Well, I mean, I hope there is series 3 of your podcast, because I still think there is work to do and information to be given. But I completely respect if you think that well has served its purpose and you need to move on.
Well, I don't know if it has. Like, I work with a Chinese energetics coach at the moment. She talks about I'm apparently a wood energy, and she talks about us wood energies being often ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at those 80 episodes, and I'm like, they are absolutely freaking cracking content. Like, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the body of work, and what I learned. I learn in every single episode. I'm right, along with the listener, I'm right on the edge of my own learning. But somehow it's, it has a very low listenership, and the energetic exchange doesn't feel enough for me in this moment, at this moment.
I get that. And I think, the key to the podcast will be your own learning journey. Through it.
And I'm learning is one of my key values. So knowing me, I'll be back. I can't help you. I want to have other conversations with people where I learn, like, what's not to love about that. But for the moment, the energy doesn't feel right.
I understand that. I completely understand it. I mean, Julie and I are on, I think we worked out today, episode 32.
Yeah.
And we started this in November, not on a whim, because we just got a download saying do a podcast. In the middle of, we were just talking, I said, Julie, we have to do a podcast. Yeah. And so we did a podcast. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't listen to podcasts at all. So it was like, what is a podcast? And they thought, well, basically it's radio, and that's where I began my career. So I can do radio.
That's a nice
it's
link.
It's fundamentally modern contemporary radio, isn't it? Where people can choose to listen or turn off.
Yeah.
And so here we are.
Very specific, like very niche, like really super niche down. Yeah.
Absolutely. 40 years ago, I was in the world of Barbara Cartland on Springbok Radio back in South Africa. Less said there, the better. But now here I am shifting realities. I hope shifting people's realities.
Yeah.
And I honestly think you are doing the same. You've shifted my reality in the sense that listening to your podcasts and your guests has really made me rethink how work is, how people are, how we relate. And that to me is a big spiritual lesson. So I thank you for that.
Well, and how it could be, I suppose that's part of the, the raising consciousness that you talk about, Julie.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I get from a lot of clients is like, oh, it's toxic here and my boss is shit, but what's the point of leaving because it's not going to be any better anywhere else? I'm like, no. Let me tell you some stories. So to be the amplifier of places that are nourishing and caring and sort of balance the masculine and the feminine energies, and genuinely care about who you are and your own expression of creative purpose through the construct of the organization. I mean, they absolutely exist, but those stories need amplifying.
For sure.
Mm.
Julie, have you anything you want to ask?
I'm just conscious of, with Catherine saying, it feels like the podcast has, stopped, and that's absolutely fine. But what I also feel from that is having those podcasts there out in the open. We mentioned this conversation before, but again, spirituality for me, if we want to call it that, is also the lessons we want to learn, is bringing together communities. We've done we've had a lot of conditioning where everything has been where you have to do it on your own, or you have to go home and feel things on your own, or not feel them, suppress those feelings. So the work that you do, Catherine, bringing that out, you've just said, where people say, I'm stuck, I'm in a dead-end job, don't like the boss, but I can't do anything about it. That actually, when I hear that, it's a conditioning, isn't it, of what, of that kind of suck it up, go get a cup of tea and everything will be fine. And actually, no, if we change that perception on things, and we go, what's the possibility of getting another job? What's the possibility of seeing something, seeing another job that might actually be my dream job? Maybe that will help. And having somebody like you, Catherine, to say this is potential, this is your potential if you change it all around, and having that other voice that somebody can hear just makes it all worthwhile. That's how we raise consciousness. For me, that's that. If you change even one person's life, that's me. If I even changed another person's life for the better, isn't it all worth it? But hopefully we want to change the masses. But yeah, and I just think with podcasts, people just listening to that thinking, I could do something different. Have I been thinking wrong? Not wrong, but have I been thinking in this conditioned way all along? And you're telling me that I don't have to go home and be depressed. I don't have to go home and just struggle through the day after day after day until you get home, and you can really relieve it with however you want to do it, whether it's addiction or whatever. You mean to say you don't have to do this? That's the bit that we're here. I just feel all of us are here to do, is to say to people, bring communities together. You've talked about bringing a group together. I think that would be amazing. That's the sort of thing that I like to do, because then people just don't feel isolated and learn. Like, that's another thing I'm talking about in spirituality, is this thing of we don't need to suppress things anymore, that we can just kind of let it all out, let it all go, and move on and thrive. The thing that human beings were really brought on earth to do, to learn these lessons and thrive from that. Might take a long time before that, because we've got a lot of lessons to go through, but no, ultimately, I think the things you're doing is helping humanity, and that's spirituality.
Thank you, Julie. I think part of my life lessons has been about learning how to fight for my life, and therefore ultimately fight for other people's lives. Like, I have a very low tolerance for people who aren't, once the door has been pushed open just a little bit, to go, ooh, okay, let me see if I can open the door a little further. My father chose to kill himself as opposed to live his life. It was his choice, but a deeply painful one for the rest of us who continue to live around him. And it horrifies me to think that anyone would get to the place. It's extreme, but to get to a place where I can't find a reason to fight for the life that I have. And I'm not talking about the basic needs of Maslow's hierarchy. I'm talking about living a life of expression of and there is privilege in that, which we will which we can acknowledge here. But for those of us who are privileged enough to feel safe and have a house over our roof, I think the next spiritual task is to fight for the full creative expression that is within you. I had a whopping fight with my mother, who Rob knows, last week, who's aged and has some health problems, and she just completely apathetic about going to the doctor. The appointment's 8 weeks away. I'm like, let's call him. no, I don't want to make a fuss. Like, and you're fussing over me,
Yeah.
and I'm like, we had to agree strongly to disagree, because I'm like, this is not fussing. This is fighting for a life that you deserve. In your final years, in your 80 years, you deserve to live with an appetite and be allowed to eat chocolate. The fact that he's banned you from chocolate and wine is outrageous. And so it's,
It is.
I can
I
feel
absolutely
myself.
agree.
You
I
can see me getting
wholeheartedly agree.
activated in all
Yeah,
of this, right? It's like, that's,
Mm.
if there is a spiritual task that I am seeing through, which breaks the line of my ancestral line completely, is like, you've got one life, fucking live it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, our parents' generation come from that line of the authorities are right and you're wrong. The authorities are right. I'll just wait until they tell me what to do. And that that stabs me in the heart. It's like, no, what is it you want to do? If you like you say, you've got to sometimes push for these things with the authorities. It's just how they are. I've worked for the NHS. I know the funds, how some of the funds work from the past and whatever. But people aren't doing it deliberately. You've just got to push yourself there. And I think that's our lessons from our, the sort of the next generation above them, is that, no, we want to be different. We have a right, we have, we're worthy, we deserve it. All of this comes into then, changing lives for the better in totality. Yeah.
Amen.
Well said. Catherine, I think we're going to have to leave you there because our time is short and it's nearly up. So
we all turned up to go burn something down out there. Thanks so much.
Our pleasure.
I'm going to find my local
Glad
witches
to
and go
help.
burn something down.
Instead, put that question out
I saw a
instead
lovely.
of burning down.
Well, we can
And
close
just ask
something out.
yourself, why do you want to burn something down?
Oh, there's lots I want to burn. Lots I want
Find
to
those
burn
triggers.
down. There's a lovely post I was sharing last night about, if you aren't someone that the church wanted to kill 400 years ago, what are you doing with your life?
Gosh.
Oh, I love that.
Amazing. Amazing.
I'd be burned 400 years ago. I'm like, yeah, bring it on. So I'll line it up for a next episode around witches.
That would be good.
We've done some of them, but we can do another one.
Yeah. Good to shuffle things up, spare things up and waft it in the air. Here you go, throw it in the air. Let's have a look at this now. And not Rob and I say, in order to live the light, live the full light, you've got to look at the darkness as well. You've got to, share the darkness and work your way through it in order for the light to shine on it and transmute it. That's all that, again, another spirituality task that we've got. That's all I see in that way.
Indeed.
Right.
And Catherine, then we'll call that quits for now, sadly. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah. Been a delight. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. You're a real inspiration and your work is amazing. And
thank you.
Whatever direction you go in, it will just blossom. I know that. So onwards and upwards.
Yeah. And we'll put all of Catherine's details, how to contact her, how to find a podcast, because I want more people to listen to her podcast. Anything on, Catherine, you can send us all your details. We will put them below and have to find her.
I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, I love connection. So for people to reach out, find me on whatever platform is of their choosing, or tell me how they find the podcast. I'd love that. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, Catherine. Right. Bye for now.
Cheers.